Good morning. Oh, good. Jennifer already is coming up. Hand them out in order. They're numbered. So the sign-in sheets are going to be coming around. There's a number in the upper right-hand corner of that sheet. Remember what number is on your sheet so that when you go to sign out, it's easier for you to find. It's only 1 through 5, so it's not hard to remember, okay? All right. Appreciate everybody being here, third year doing this event. It's very fun to do, actually. I do enjoy being here. LREC gave me a little bit of a hard time because it's in a bar, but you know, I got them calmed down. So anyway, today we're going to be talking about back to the basics. Don't forget that you need to sign in and out. The very basics. If you have a laptop open, close it. Silence your phones. I am here to help you maintain your real estate license, and in order for me to keep my education license, I have to enforce the no electronic devices. I appreciate you being respectful of that. All right, so I want to ask you a little bit about what has happened in the real estate industry in the last couple of years. Y'all digging in okay? All the changes? You're aware that more are coming? So don't settle in too much, okay? So there's a lot of things going on in the real estate industry. One, the Department of Justice and some attorneys nationwide are really digging in and looking to make some major changes within the industry. I don't know that all the changes are great. I'm going to step down. Her poor neck. In talking with several people over the last year, I said, hey, I need to write a new class for the arena event in May, and what do you think we should be talking about this year? And overwhelmingly, I got the response of basics. And it's interesting, though, because one of the other things that we talk about a lot right now is AI. AI is not basic right now, right? Do you think AI is going to be basic? Yeah. How many of you are currently using AI in some sort of fashion within your business life, etc.? I will tell you this, Chenzo Corona, he's head of North Shore Startup at St. Tammany Economic Development. He put it this way. He said, right now, AI is not replacing people, but people using AI are replacing people who don't, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go through some of what the basics are in real estate. We have a lot to cover in a couple of hours, but you've got all the notes. This is meant to be interactive, so if you think you're here for a sit and get, please do not. We want to have some conversation about real estate and practices. So let's talk about what principles are. Principles are essential building blocks that provide structure and guidance across various domains, influencing how systems operate and how individuals and groups conduct themselves. How do you think that statement was written? With AI, right? But it's kind of a principle now, right? The entire outline for this class was written with AI. Now I wrote the actual content, right? So what's the difference between principles and tactics? Anybody know the primary difference between principles and tactics? Oh, come on, it's not that early. Y'all were chatting it up out there. I was watching you. It's the primary difference between principles and tactics. Huh? You cheated? Well, say it.
Well, it says that principles don't change, but tactics do.
Correct. Principles don't change, but tactics do. Are we not always changing tactics? In fact, agents are a little fast at changing tactics. Oh, that didn't work. I sent out 2 mailings. That didn't work. And then we start changing tactics. But principles are principles. They really do not change. There's nothing new. What can put pressure on principles? This is not my normal setup. Right? Market changes. When the market is down, do you think and you're not making as much money, do you think there might be pressure on your principals because you need to get a deal done? What about when the market is really super fast? And remember when you couldn't even go out and show the property? I mean, you had to like just throw an offer at it, right? Or you ran out, showed it, and then threw an offer at it, hoping you would get it, right? Do you think when you're moving fast like that, it can put pressure on your principals to not explain things as well, right? Exactly. What about financial pressures that come with those? Yes, that is one of the primary factors that puts pressure on our principals. And real estate is famous for that. You ever hear the term commission breath? Yeah. The status quo. Leslie and I were talking about this earlier. The status quo. That's the way we've always done it. That's the way we are here. That's the way it is, right? Remember the story about cutting off the ends of the ham? I don't know. Mom did it. Ask Mom. Mom, why do you cut off the ends of the ham? I don't know. Grandma did it. Ask Grandma, why'd you cut the ends off the ham? Because it wouldn't fit in the pan. Right? Sometimes we forget about why some of these things started, but we just continue doing them and they don't apply anymore, right? Extreme scrutiny in our industry. If you don't think that the Department of Justice is watching, you're wrong. They are watching practically every Facebook group, page, anything that you are posting, anything that you are doing, and they are waiting for bad actors to pop up. The attorneys have said, we are watching, and we will come after you, right? So principles are a very, very big guiding factor. We are going to have more changes, I believe, no later than 2026. So one of the things I want you to write down and really live by is go slow to go fast. I used to work for a leadership development firm in Wisconsin as a leadership transformation development facilitator. And that's a mouthful. But one of the things that we always taught people is go slow to go fast. If you take time up front in everything that you're doing, the rest of your transaction is going to go way better, right? How many ninjas do we have in here? Do we have any ninja selling installed? All right, a couple. Woohoo! I come from ninja country. I'm from Fort Collins, Colorado originally. I grew up with all the ninjas in the real estate business. And that's a great system. But one of the things that ninjas say is we provide, they decide. We provide them information and the client decides. Sometimes we forget. We forget that sometimes we think it's our transaction and it's not, right? So if you go slow enough to explain things to your client, things are going to go better. If you control the process within that you work, it's going to go better, because if you let the client control the process, what are you going to be doing? You'll be chasing them the entire time. Ever had a transaction like that? Yeah. I think one of the best things that came about is we have to now slow down and do a buyer's consultation before we go out, because the buyers used to control that. Hey, I want to see this house now, and if you're not available, I'm calling the next widget. They think we're widgets. I'm not a widget. So we're getting back to some basic principles. First and foremost is prompt and clear communication. Timely responses to client inquiries and needs are crucial in real estate. Clients expect quick answers to their questions, and delays can lead to frustration or lost opportunities. Consistent and clear communication helps build trust, keeps clients informed throughout the buying or selling process. A lack of communication because you don't have an answer is not acceptable. Making a short call to let them know you don't have the answer yet will let them know, but will let them know as soon as possible goes a long way. How many of you get fearful, especially with listings, when things might be sitting and you're like, I really don't want to call them this week. This is going to suck. And then that week goes by, and then the next week happens, and you're like, now I'm kind of embarrassed that I didn't call them last week. I'm not going to call them this week. And the next week happens, right? So, interestingly enough, in the listing agreement that I use, we have a clause in there where they can cancel their listing agreement with us if they do not hear from their designated agent every 7 days. That's holding feet to the fire, right? That's a part of our service guarantee. It's a written service guarantee. It's also in the listing agreement. It's called abandonment, right? So communication solves a lot of problems. Communication with clients, that's what comes up first and foremost in our mind, right? Because that's where the bread and butter is, we think, right, is the clients. What about fellow professionals? Do you extend the same communication courtesy to the agents around you that you would to your client? I think not. I've heard some of you speak to each other. If you spoke to a client like that, you'd be fired, right? We have to remember that, now I've been in the business a long time, not as long as some, but longer than others. 28 years, I'm licensed in 3 states. We called each other cooperating brokers. And then somehow it became, let's out-bitch each other to the closing table, right? We have to remember that we are interdependent and we owe each other a lot of professionalism. Rules and regs, actually, now the reason I get this kind of stuff approved is because I quote rules and regs. They love that when I do it. It shall be the responsibility of each of the designated agents to make reasonable efforts to contact and notify the designated agent of the other party of the existence of an offer or counteroffer. That's in the rules and regs. How many of you have ever received an email with an offer and you have never heard from that agent? Raise your hand. Yeah, that's sad. Do you know how many hands I saw go up? So do you realize that if you are one of those agents sending offers or counteroffers or whatever and you're not contacting that other agent, you're violating rules and regs? Wow. Back to basics, guys. Not only is it your responsibility to communicate effectively during the offer and negotiation stage, but throughout the transaction. When you don't respond professionally and respectfully to another agent, it can build resentment and loss of trust. Do you want loss of trust or resentment from a co-worker at another company? How many of you, and I know my wife is going to raise her hand because this just happened. How many of you feel that you have gotten offers when maybe your offer wasn't the best, but the agent spoke highly of you to the other client? That they know that you're going to do a good job and this is most likely to succeed? How many of you have gotten offers accepted? Yeah, me too, right? That goes a long ways. That's pretty basic, very basic, but all of us have seen problems with that, obviously. All right, types of communication. So this first one up on the screen is just face-to-face. That's the best. Face-to-face, belly-to-belly, eye-to-eye, right? Because there's a lot to be learned from people's facial expressions, body language, all those types of things, right? So I'm also a certified DISC consultant, personality assessment, worked a lot in that field as well. And did you know that 98% of communication is nonverbal? Right? So if you're relying on other types, you're missing out. There's phone calls, all right? Phone calls are next best. Your brain switches gears when you're on a phone call, and that gear is switched to listening better, right? We actually listen to tone, we listen to what's not being said, what's being said, but you have to get good at it. Is that Daniel? Daniel. All right, there's also video conferencing, Zoom. That got pretty popular, didn't it? How many of you have used Zoom, video conferencing, anything like that with a client, anybody? Yeah, absolutely. It's very how many of you have shown homes that way? How many of your clients have picked out that home based on that? Yikes. Right? There's texting. How many of you love to text? Oh my God. You know what text is good for? Text is good for facts. Facts only. Facts. Do not try to convey any type of emotion. If you're texting and want to get a point across, you have to remember that they're going to read it with the voice in their head. And their voice is going to sound like, well, she said, me. That's always the way it comes out, right? How many of you are married? And you tell, oh, my husband said, right? That's the thing, is they're going to read it with the sound in their head and then apply it to you. And it's not fair. Because I know most of you don't sound that way, right? Also, if you're using text, that has to be a part of your transaction file. How many of you actually put that in your transaction file? One hand.
That's only because I was involved in a lawsuit and I learned the hard way.
Yeah, did you hear that? She said the only reason was because it was part of a lawsuit and I learned the hard way. I have had 5 real estate commission complaints, 1 board grievance, and 1 fair housing complaint filed against me in my 28 career. I have been cleared of all of those. Every single one I was cleared on. Do you know why? Records. Everybody says, Steve, you're too hard. You're too tough. Yeah, but I've not ever gotten sued. Okay? Emails. That's very common. What are emails good for? Facts. I love having this mic. Can I have a little more bass, please? Video conferencing. That's pretty common anymore, showing houses, talking to people. That helps because you can at least see some facial expressions along with the Zoom, etc. Handwritten notes. How many of you actually write letters to anybody? Woo! All right, man, you speak my language, right? Handwritten notes to people are fancy again, right? Because nobody gets them anymore. And when you get it, I save everything that my mother writes to me now. Same thing with my dad. He's going blind. His handwriting really stinks now. So I save it, and I'm like, oh, because he's like this big. But handwriting is really cool, right? So handwritten notes. Why not write a handwritten note thanking the other agent? Have you ever done that? I hope so. Think about it, okay? How effective is each type of communication? We've determined that. When should each type be used? If you have to have a conversation where emotion needs to be portrayed, you need to be on the phone, you need to be belly to belly. Okay? If you're transmitting facts, offer received, text. Offer received, it really sucked. Don't do that. I've seen agents go, is your client serious? This is about, and they write a freaking novel of garbage, right? Don't do that. Don't do that. Professionally avoid slang, acronyms, emoji, profanity, anything like that. I'm going to move on from communication. Because towards the end of this course, well, the middle is where we get into a lot of meat and potatoes, and I don't want to miss any of that. If you notice what's on the screen there, do what is right, not what is easy. Doing things correctly with excellence is hard. Do you agree? We don't like hard in this business. That's too hard. But it's only hard. It's not impossible, it's only hard. Ethical representation can be difficult. So let's talk about fiduciary duty, all right? When you're an agent for somebody, right, you have fiduciary duties. What is a fiduciary duty? Does anybody know? Can you tell me? Yes, Candy. Putting your client's needs above your own. Easily said, difficult to do. Early on in my career, I brought on a new partner, and she's still my partner to this day, gosh, 20 years later, in Colorado. And, it's over here, Stephanie. Stephanie's picking up the sign-in sheets so that she can prepare certificates, so make sure she's got that. Early on in my career, I brought on this partner, and she was in one of her first transactions, and she was being asked to represent a client that was ending up in a wrap. If you've ever seen a wrap, it's where you leave one loan in place and you put another one around it. It's very similar to the subject to type transactions. It can be considered loan fraud. because most loan documents have a due on sale clause, and those properties are being sold and the first loan becomes due, etc. So I told her that she needed to walk away from that transaction, and she was in the room with everybody. She goes, yeah, but it's a $9,000 commission. How many of you would walk away from $9,000 because it's the right thing to do? Yeah. $9,000 isn't going to go very far when you lose your license. Won't even pay the court costs you might have, right? Putting the client's needs above your own. That is very, very difficult, especially with financial pressures. Very difficult. Acting in the client's best interest with honesty, loyalty, and diligence. Providing accurate information. Disclosing conflicts of interest. We don't like to do that sometimes. Recommendations aligning with the client's objectives. Remember when I said we provide, they decide? We don't always get to decide what that objective is. The client does, right? And we have to ask them. We may think that what they're doing is absolutely asinine. Not our job, right? We advise them, but again, it has to align with their objectives. Now, does that mean blowing smoke at them? Absolutely not. You need to tell them the pros, cons, the good, bad, and the ugly, right? But their decisions are theirs. And are there any of the attorneys in the room? They're all gone. Drinking. I didn't say that. I was just repeating it. Remember that legal and ethical don't always match, and they would agree with this, right? Just because it's legal to do does not make it the right thing to do, right? Okay? Fiduciary duty. We're going to talk about why there's no fiduciary duty in dual agency. Are you aware of that? There is no fiduciary duty in dual agency. I hate the term dual agency. It still says agency. Many agents believe I am still an agent of, because it says dual agency. You are not. Other states call it transaction brokerage. That's more fitting because that's all you're doing is brokering a transaction, okay? So to everybody know what the fiduciary duties are, can you recite them? There's a hint on the screen.
Obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting, reasonable skill, care,
And Shantae can read. Woohoo! Yep, old car is how you remember it. Obedience. Loyalty, so you have to do what they tell you to do as long as it's a lawful request. Loyalty, only loyal to that consumer in that transaction. Disclosure, disclose all material facts that need to be disclosed. Confidentiality, we're going to talk about that a lot, well, a little, but we're going to make a big point with it. Accounting and reasonable skill and care. Now, the reasonable skill and care, during this class, I add another one in there called diligence. Reasonable skill, care, and diligence, okay? So obedience. Agents must follow all lawful instructions from their clients. This means executing the client's wishes promptly and efficiently, provided that they are legal and ethical. For example, if a client instructs an agent to list their property at a specific price, the agent is obligated to do so. Luckily, we were able to defeat some proposed legislation a few weeks ago. There was a representative, I think he was out of Tangipahoa, who was trying to pass legislation that was going to be not real good for us. And part of it was that we had to accurately depict the value of the property in our marketing. Who determines that, right? The buyer, ultimately, but the seller gets to choose what it is that they're asking, right? Now, you have an ethical obligation if you know that it's just not even right. You have the ethical obligation to ask yourself, do I even want to do this business, right? But if you are promoting a higher price than what the property is worth just to get the listing, that's where you have a real problem. It's the intent. Does that make sense? Loyalty. Agents are required to act solely in the best interests of their clients, even above their own interest. This includes avoiding conflicts of interest and not profiting at the client's expense. For instance, an agent should not represent both the buyer and seller in a transaction without full disclosure and consent from both parties, and the license law is quoted there. So that loyalty explains why you can't be an agent for both parties in dual agency, right? You cannot advise, counsel one over the other. You have to provide them the same information. So, in dual agency, what is your role? I'm going to ask this. How many of you like dual agency? It's okay. How many of you like dual agency? You like what? The money? Okay. What is your role if you're a dual agent? Candy, you raised your hand. What's your role? I don't care. Mumble. Yeah. As a dual agent, what is your role? Okay, so advisor is a key red flag to me in the thought process, because you cannot advise one party over the other. Really, it is here, this is what the buyer wants to do. Here, this is what the seller wants to do. And they say, well, what's the value of the home? You run 1 cent of comps, you run one market analysis, and you provide that exact same one to both people. You're transferring paper back and forth. That's all you're doing. So if you're a dual agent and you're collecting additional compensation, do you believe that you're earning all of that compensation when it's not what you sold your client that you were going to do? You said, I'm working for you, I'm going to negotiate for you, I'm going to get you the best price for this house. Now all of a sudden it changed what I was doing, right? Same thing with your buyer. I'm going to get you the best price you can on a house. I just told them I was going to get them the best price. I just really want you to think about dual agency. Most agents in Colorado operate transaction brokerage incorrectly because they advise people and they keep calling people my client. When does agency relationship form in Louisiana? Anybody know?
When the person thinks you're their agent.
You've been in my class before? So the answer is when the consumer believes you are their agent. That's it. That's it. So when you were operating without a buyer's representation agreement, and if some of you still are, when do they believe that you are their agent? If they want to sue you because something went wrong, you were their agent. If now they don't want to pay you, they weren't my agent. So you see where it was wrong in the past if you weren't using a buyer's representation agreement, right? Because it's all about what they think. Okay? Is dual agency in the consumer's best interest? Yes or no? What's the attorney's favorite thing to say? It depends. Right? If both clients say, yes, this is the way we want to go, we fully understand it, and it makes some purpose for their transaction easier, then yes. If it is purely for us to make more money or to control the situation because we don't have to deal with another agent, etc., then I would say it may not be in the client's best interests. Okay? What about maintaining designated agency and treating the other party as a customer? Have you ever thought about that? We get stuck thinking about the status quo. Well, this is the way it is. We have these three options: buyer's agency, seller's agency, or dual agency. But what if you maintain agency with one client and treat the other client as a customer? You ever thought about that? Anybody do that? Yeah? How's that work?
I actually did it last night.
Yep.
I got a signed call, and the guy, gave me that little speech of, I know I can get it a better price if they don't have to pay, the seller doesn't have to pay buyer's agent. And I said, that's fine. I said, but I represent the seller, and I'm looking out for the seller's best interest. He would ask me questions, I would show him, I just sat in the car, and walk around with his wife, ask me questions that I couldn't answer and I wouldn't answer.
Yep.
He verbally gave me a low ball offer this morning, and I just responded with facts.
Yeah.
And that's it. So he
Yeah.
did upfront,
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very cool thing. I've used it a lot in my career. You have to know, and this is a part of the mastery of your craft, you have to master agency law, license law, rules and regs, your documents, and know the insides and outs. Many agents don't do that. I'm kind of a nerd. How many of you have actually read license law, agency law, and the rules and regs from start to finish? Me. Daniel's like, yeah, I bet he did. Does your listing agreement allow for different compensation for an unrepresented buyer? You might want to think about that, right? Because if you want to maintain your agency relationship with your seller, but then somebody comes like that, well, I'm going to save money because I'm going to come in unrepresented. Well, you full well know what your job is about to be harder, right? And so what if you just change your compensation if there's an unrepresented buyer? Now, I want you to think about the agency disclosure pamphlet as well. Many agents will get tripped up on this by thinking, well, I can perform ministerial acts and complete that purchase agreement for them and present it to the seller. No, you can't. The agency disclosure clearly says you can perform ministerial acts for a consumer represented by another licensee. That's what it says. How many of you have read the agency disclosure form? Right? That's what it says. It does not say you can do this for anybody. Right? So it's only if they're represented by another agent. And then you have to ask yourself, well, why would that other agent have me fill out a form for them? But, whatever. So the Louisiana purchase agreement is really cool in that, it goes both ways. The seller can make an offer to the buyer. Did you ever notice that underneath the signature lines, it says buyer signature or seller signature, and you have to select a box? Did you ever ask yourself why that was? It's because the seller can make an offer to the buyer. So the seller can make an offer to that unrepresented buyer, right? You're doing a little extra work in order to get this done, thus maybe a possibly increased fee for doing so, right? And then that buyer writes up a counter of some kind, right? And it needs fixed. So you just write up a new purchase agreement on behalf of the seller and you provide that to the buyer to keep the paperwork clean. Do you see? Doing excellent work is a little bit harder, but is it that much harder? And then you just look like a rock star to your seller. Okay? Think about that. All right. Agents must disclose all relevant material information to their clients. This includes presenting all offers, disclosing any relationships with other parties involved in the transaction, informing clients of any facts that could affect their decisions. For example, if an agent is aware of structural issues, we all know that, right? What must you disclose? Material latent, or not latent, but material facts that you know. What can't you disclose? Does anybody know what you cannot disclose? Yes. Confidential information, that is correct. That is one. One in particular that I'm thinking of is like somebody's HIV status, their medical status. You can't disclose that. If somebody's concerned about somebody living in a house with HIV, you cannot discuss that. Okay? Fair housing. What should you only disclose when asked? If somebody if somebody died in the house, a murder, etc. Exactly. Now, if you're working in different states, I suggest that how many of you are multiply licensed? Yeah, make sure that you understand disclosure rules in different states because they are very different. Just as an example, in Colorado, if the property was contaminated with methamphetamine and it was cleaned up to state standards, I do not have to disclose that. Do I? Yeah. Because it's public record in Colorado, right? Here you have to disclose it, right? And I've cleaned up, I think, 5 meth labs in my career, so yeah. Confidentiality. Agents must disclose all relevant and material information to their clients. This includes, that's the wrong, I fixed this after I sent them this slide. Anyway, you're not supposed to disclose anything that's confidential. We're not going to worry about that slide. Confidential information means information obtained by a licensee from a client during the term of a brokerage agreement that was made confidential by the written request or written instruction of the client, or information the disclosure of which could materially harm the position of the client. Who determines if the disclosure of that information might materially harm their position? The client. We don't get to decide that. We may think that information is benign, right? But then we start lipping off, and then we find out later, oh, that put them in a bad spot, right? Okay? Now you can, once any of the following occurs, the client permits the disclosure by word or conduct, right? The disclosure is required by law or would reveal serious defect. The information becomes public from a source other than the licensee. Confidential information shall not be considered to include material information about the physical condition, and confidential information can be disclosed by the designated agent to his broker for the purpose of seeking advice or assistance for the benefit of the client. If a client authorizes you to disclose something, what's the best way to memorialize that? Writing. Do you need an amendment? Maybe, maybe not, but would that be a good thing for a text or an email that you could put in the file? Pretty simple. It's a fact, right? Okay. Do you ever overshare in offer meetings or in office meetings? I say yes. Not to any of you particularly, but I have been in other offices where there's new listings coming on board, and the listing agent says, oh, this is wonderful, my client's so sweet, but she's got cancer and she really needs to sell, blah, 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 blah. You just disclose crap that can be used against that client by agents in your own office. You can't trust anybody with that information when they become a designated agent and they have what? Fiduciary duties. Be careful what you talk about with your friends or people in the office, right? This is where I think people get astray sometimes. We get really comfortable. And I love you all. I really do. I see a lot of faces that I know in here, and I don't distrust anybody in here, but I wouldn't tell you anything confidential about my client because you might bring an offer on something, right? Remember, you're the designated agent, and only the broker should know the details as needed. Accounting. Agents must account for all funds and property entrusted to them by their clients. This includes keeping accurate records of transactions, promptly depositing earnest money, that should say deposit, into appropriate accounts, and ensuring that all financial aspects of the transaction are handled properly. In Louisiana, what's the difference between earnest money and deposit? Anyone? I watched Ferris Bueller the other night. Any Bueller? Deposit is returnable. It's refundable. What about earnest money? It is not. That is an actual legal term in Louisiana. Earnest money, by definition, is not refundable. Okay, so that's why we call it deposit here. I had to fix my head around that because I always wanted to call everything an EMD, an earnest money deposit. Well, that's a conflict of terms just right in there. So I had to fix my head. Accounting. Commission may censure a licensee, registrant, or certificate holder, or conditionally or unconditionally suspend, revoke any license, etc., levy fines, or impose civil penalties not to exceed $5,000, or impose continuing education requirements on licensees, etc., if in the opinion of the commission, a licensee, registrant, or certificate holder is performing or attempting to perform or is performed or is attempted to perform any of the following acts. Failure to account for money coming into his possession belonging to others. All right, I'm going to tell you a little story about a transaction that I was one of the buyers. All right, we wrote an offer on this property. It got accepted. We turned in the deposit check with with everything. The listing agent come back and says, "Oh, I'm sorry, we don't hold the deposit. This has to go to the title company." I said, "No. The accepted purchase agreement says the listing company is going to hold that deposit." He said, "Okay, I'll take care of that." All right, 5 weeks go by, we go to the closing table, sit down to close. Out of his pocket comes my check. and hands it to me. I filed a complaint against the broker. The broker was not censured, fined at all. The agent was, because evidently it was found that he did not do what he needed to do with it. I don't know what knowledge the broker had of it. But who else can hold the deposit? The selling firm, right? Doesn't have to go to a title company, and I have a whole opinion about the title companies holding deposits. Failure to properly disperse money which belongs to others upon its coming into his possession, commingling the money or property of his principals with his own. If somebody is going to Venmo you a deposit, have you had somebody want to Venmo you a deposit? Yep. Unless that's going to go directly into an escrow account, which it shouldn't because it's still passing through your possession, I would venture to say the commission's going to have a problem with that. Accepting, giving, or charging any undisclosed commission, rebate, or direct profit on expenditures made for a principal. Okay? We talked about that one. So accounting can extend to other financial aspects of the transaction. I don't want you to think about just the deposit. What about closing cost concessions? Were the closing concessions noted on the contract completely used? Okay? Think about that. If there were leftover funds, were they attributed to a price reduction or other allowable costs? How the seller concession is worded in the purchase agreement makes a difference in how this is handled. You thought about this? I see it happen all the time. So the purchase agreement says the seller will contribute $6,000 to buyer's closing costs, prepaids, blah, 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 right? So then the lender only ends up using $5,000 of it, and you go to closing. And the seller gets an additional $1,000. What should happen with that additional $1,000 that wasn't used? What's that?
It should be put back on the buyer's side, but it has to be stipulated by the contract and your additional terms and conditions for financing.
Yeah, exactly. So it depends on how you want to approach it. The buyer can say, well, I didn't use all of that, but you said that I was going to get $6,000. I only got $5,000, so I want a $1,000 price reduction. That's acceptable, right? So if I am the listing agent and I get an offer that says seller to contribute X amount for closing costs, as a listing agent, I'm going to want 2 words to be added to that. What are those 2 words? Up to. If I'm the buyer's agent, do I want up to included in that? No. So you got to pay attention, right? Is that a part of fiduciary duties on both parts? Yeah. Is that a part of excellence? Yeah. Is it that much harder? No. What's one of the first things I told you today in this class is what? Go slow to go fast. Exactly. I would be lying if I said I never made a mistake like that in any of my deals. It happens, right? But I want you to be thinking about it. Did you review the settlement statement to ensure its accuracy beyond your commission? It's the first thing agents look for. They get the settlement statement. Yeah, the 10 grand's on there. All right. Reasonable skill and care. Let's talk about that. Agents are expected to use their skills and expertise to benefit their clients. This involves staying informed about market conditions, understanding legal requirements, and providing competent advice. For example, an agent should advise a client on the best strategies for pricing their property based on current market trends. In the realm of real estate, the fiduciary duty of reasonable skill, care, and I added diligence obligate agents to act with the competence and attentiveness expected of a prudent professional. This duty ensures that clients receive knowledgeable guidance and protection throughout the transactions. Anybody on a license for a year or less in here? You? Okay, you? Yeah, I see you showing up all the time. What's your name?
Tracy.
Tracy. Yeah. Have you been to one of my classes before? No. All right. Nice to meet you.
Yeah,
All right. Who has had their license for 30 years or more? Just my wife. I'm going to get this right. She got it when she was 5. Last week I said she was 35. I got shot. All right. So would Tracy be expected to have the same reasonable skill and care as Jennifer?
Yes.
Yes. Do you know why? They have a license. That's why when you get licensed, you have to work for a broker. Hopefully the broker is competent and instructs you well, right? What if you've been licensed for 5 years and have closed 500 transactions, but another licensee has been licensed for 10 years and closed 10 transactions? I honestly think that states should really take a look at a number of transactions completed as opposed to a number of years before advancing licenses. Now in Colorado, everybody's a broker, right? But you become a broker associate and then you become an employing broker, but you still have all the knowledge and responsibilities as a broker. There are no salesperson licenses there. Even as a broker associate, we are required to know how to close our own transactions. We don't, but we are required to know that. I had my license for the required 2 years, and I became a broker. I was way out of my element, guys. I got my teeth kicked in, right? So I think, and I had closed a fair amount of transactions, don't get me wrong. In my first 6 months, I closed 24 transactions. And in fact, the first 4 closings that I had were back-to-back 1031 exchanges that day. So when he talks about 1031s, and those were my first experiences at the closing table, yeah. Okay, so the professional expectations are the same. By virtue of having the license, you have the same expectations of performance. That's a little bit scary to me, all right? So, I've closed over 1,000 transactions. I know there's people in here that have closed more than me. And you still never learn everything, do you? Not only have I closed over 1,000 transactions, but how many do you think I have supervised in 26 years? Thousands, right? Still haven't seen everything. Reasonable skill. So there's reasonable skill that goes beyond just contract knowledge. What about market trends, property values, legal requirements, effective negotiation strategies? What else? Where do you learn about market trends? Where do you get your information? The MLS, InfoSparks. But has anybody ever taught you what that means? Do you really know what year over year means? Do you really understand what percentage of sales price to list price means? Is that the original list price? Is that the last list price? We're expected to know all of this stuff because what are we? We're the experts in a drip that used to be, right? How many about property values? How many have had education on determining property values, a CMA? Yeah, professional education, not just an agent selling you, this is how you do it. Right, when I first got my license, my broker, God love him, he died about 5 years ago. He's my age, that really hit home. He was a good dude. But he didn't teach me anything, really. I said, well, how do I do a CMA? He says, well, you pull up 6 comps, 3 active, 3 sold, you kind of average that out. Yeah, well, I've spent a lot of my career working for some of the largest financial institutions in the country, including Fannie Mae, and I was taught exactly how you do a property valuation, and let me tell you, it ain't even close to that. Okay? Expectation of leveraging their specialized knowledge for the client's best interests. That's why they hire you. They don't hire you because you're pretty. They don't hire you because you have the license to get this thing done. Right? They hire you because you're expected to have expert knowledge and accurate market analysis. The banks that I worked for, it was Lehman Brothers. How many remember Lehman Brothers? Oh, I worked for them. That dude was miserable, man. He goes, there's an exact number. You have to give me the exact number that house is worth. And I'm like, I don't know what rock you crawled out from under it. That doesn't exist, right? But you have to come pretty close, right? Okay? Advise on realistic pricing. What else? What else is reasonable skill? Anything? What about pointing out possible inspection items? You're not an inspector, You're not saying something is a problem, but you know, after seeing thousands and thousands of houses and problems and stuff, that something might be an issue. And so you say, wow, that roof might be an issue. We need to point that out to the inspector, right? Wow, there's a crack. Yeah, there is. There's a crack in the floor right here. That might be an issue. We need to point that out to the inspector, right? That's reasonable skill, okay? Reasonable care. The duty of reasonable care requires agents to act with the caution and attentiveness that a prudent professional would exercise in similar circumstances. Prudent professional. My daughters are both professionals. My oldest has a master's in social work. She does a lot of crisis counseling, drug rehab stuff. Now she does family counseling and things. My youngest daughter, in fact, tomorrow is taking her nurse practitioner exam. So I was asking my oldest last night. She said, "What are you teaching on, Dad?" I said, "Fiduciary duty." She said, "Well, that sounds fun." She goes, "I don't even know what a fiduciary duty is." Our clients don't know what fiduciary duties are, right? So who do you want to decide what a prudent professional would do? Do you want the judge to do that? I don't. So I'm going to do anything and everything that I can. I am so glad that you're all in the class, right? That shows, hey, I try, I learn, right? I'm doing my best. That's a part of it, right? Thoroughness in all aspects of the transaction, meticulously reviewing contracts. We talked about that. It can slip by, guys. How many times are you up at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, right? It gets tiring. Ensuring compliance with disclosure obligations. Lead-based paint is one that I see all the time, where it's not loaded to the MLS and the lead-based paint disclosure comes later and all that kind of thing. That needs to be done at time of offer, right? Safeguarding client confidentiality. We're not good at that. We're not good. I hear it at broker tours. I hear at broker tours people talking about their clients. What else? Avoiding negligence, promptly addressing potential harm to clients, double checking details. What else? Anybody else have anything that would go on that reasonable care list? Do you think you're reasonably careful? Good. Diligence. Here's the one that I added. Diligence refers to the persistent and earnest effort an agent must invest in managing a client's affairs. I gotta look at something. Can't tell. Seeking out opportunities. That's part of diligence, guys. Seeking out opportunities. So if you are a buyer's agent and you cannot locate on the MLS a suitable property for your client, what might you need to do as a part of diligence? Ask other agents, farm neighborhoods, right? Hey, I have a buyer letters, knock on doors, social media, all kinds of things, right? Seeking out opportunities. Same thing with sellers. We're really pretty good with sellers, right? But sometimes we land on, it's in the MLS, it's on the internet, and it's on social media. So now what do we do? What else do you do? Other agents, right? Maybe you got to spend a few bucks to boost a post. How many of you review Realtor.com performance on your listings? Anybody aware you can review Realtor.com performance on your listings? The really cool thing about the Realtor.com performance is that it gives you an idea of whereabouts in the world people are looking at your property from. Do you know one of the number one areas that's looking down here right now?
Mississippi Gulf Coast.
Mississippi Gulf Coast is one. Chicago. All right? We've got some condos listed down in the Bywater. New York, New Jersey. So if you look at some of those kinds of things, might you retarget some of your social media ads to a different area? Because is your demographic for that property that you're selling actually a local buyer? Or is it somebody somewhere else? And then you're relying on Zillow to do that for you. Right? See what I'm saying about seeking out opportunities and thinking a little bit beyond what we normally do? Okay? Following up on leads. How many of you love following up on leads? Yeah? What do you love about it? Yeah.
Just knowing where they're at in their lives and what they're doing. Plus, I'm new, so I have to.
Huh?
Right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I hate that new thing. I remember. Yeah. That's hard. It's hard. Yeah. Did you raise your hand? What do you like about it?
Because I get to have an actual conversation with a person who probably wants to live in a house or already lives in a house.
Yeah.
And those are the people that I need to talk to.
Yeah. I like that. Following up on leads, if you can get them to answer the phone, which is difficult, right? Having a conversation with people and finding out some things about them is really pretty fun. I love that. My ex-wife, that's why she's ex, she always said, I won't say the word, but you're a hole. Sometimes I am. But I talk to everybody. I just have fun, right? I don't always get it right, but I have a pretty good track record of knowing where somebody's going to come from if I try to joke with them. So I was working at a local restaurant for Cinco de Mayo. We always go help them out. And I was working the front door, and it was late enough in the day. You can bleep this out. I kind of lost my give a shit. And so we were working the door. It was very, very busy. Somebody got past me, and they got inside the restaurant. Well, the hostess inside the restaurant sent them back out because we were taking the names and getting people logged in. And he comes out and he goes, "Are you the one taking names?" I said, "Yes, sir, I'm taking names and kicking ass. Which one you want?" And I thought, well, that's a Yelp review waiting to happen. But you know what? He had a good time. He thought it was funny. It was cool. We connected. It was all right. Following up on leads is really a lot of fun. But do you stop after one or two phone calls? How many phone calls do you do, Leslie?
They're buying with me or they're dying with me.
Yeah. They're buying or they're dying. At least 6. I see agents stop after 1. I called and left them a voicemail. Good for you. So did 10 other agents, right? How many emails, texts, etc. do you follow up with them? I've had people come back after I don't know how many months and said, "Well, you've been sending me this stuff." Cool, right? Following up on leads, that's diligence. Your clients hire you to sell that property. They don't hire you to sit and wait for somebody to bring you an offer on a silver platter, right? Same thing with buyers. I've got an investor buyer who is really tired of losing out. He wants 200 doors. He wants apartments. So if you've got apartments anywhere, let me know. We got 200 doors all in one place?
Like 8 units.
No, we need 200. We're close. And he's tired of losing these to the large REITs, right? The REITs blow in with all kinds of cash. They put down their money and they buy them, right? And so he wants us to find them off market. We'll just go to the owners and say, "Hey, you got 200 doors. You interested in selling? We'll give you a cap rate of this," right? You give them a cap rate. Let's see what happens, right? Ensuring timely transaction processes. This is one of the biggest things, is making sure that things are going smoothly. One of my points that I like to make out is the lender authorization letter. How many of you follow up on that lender authorization letter to proceed? Raise your hands. Right? On both sides of the transaction. I don't care who you're working for. It is both agents' responsibility to make sure that happens, because you need to protect the seller unless they have a backup offer and they want this first one out, right? Then you're not going to say boo, right? But if this is their only offer, they need this thing to close, whatever, You're going to follow up and make sure that lender is given their authorization. For the buyer, do you want to lose that property for them? No. Follow up on that letter. In my checklist, in our app, in our file management system, there's a spot for the lender authorization letter to go in there. I expect to see those.
I've actually had, seller use that as a loophole to get out of the contract.
Yeah, seller used it. How did the seller know about it?
Because I told them,
You told them. Good for you. Yes.
I had a seller win a deposit because of that lawyer.
You had seller what?
Win a deposit because of that lawyer.
When the deposit is because of the letter. Yeah. The little things matter. How many of you actually read that purchase agreement from start to finish on a regular basis? You should. Your listing agreement, you should read from start to finish on a regular basis because you're going to forget what's in there. Agents are familiar with, well, this is the way it goes. Is it? So when an agent comes to me and they ask me a question, what's the first thing that I'm going to ask them? I'm going to say, what does the contract say? What does the listing agreement say? Second question I'm going to ask them if it's a purchase agreement is who's the other agent? Because I like to know the personality styles and figure that out. Monitoring deadlines. How do you monitor deadlines? Shantae, how do you monitor deadlines? I like this.
I use Aimtree Folio. It automatically, I can upload my contract and it will automatically create a deadline for me. And it sends reminders to the client, so I'm not having to do that all on my own. Telling them what's due.
Yeah, it's called Ametree Folio. Does a really nice job. Right? How many of you use a transaction coordinator? Anybody? Yeah. Does your transaction coordinator notify all the parties of deadlines and stuff? Good. That just takes a lot of weight off your mind, doesn't it? Now, if they mess up, you're still responsible, right? You can't abdicate duties, right? But you can delegate. Due diligence items such as HOA docs. This is one that gets overlooked quite a bit. I think it's getting better, but a lot of times agents would wait for the title process to worry about HOA documents. Do you know what's wrong with that? It's not a title problem, right? So listing agents, if you're being diligent so that you don't have a problem with diligence items, when you list that property, what should you have available for the buyer's agent? HOA documents. How many of you do that? Good. Buyer's agents, how many of you are requesting them immediately upon going under contract, so you've got some time, right? Maybe you should even request them while you're writing the offer so that they have a little bit of lead time to be looking at those. Because if those HOA documents say that they can only have 2 dogs and they've got 3, well, they got a couple choices. I don't think they like one of them. Okay? Property inspections. Property inspections. How many inspections are you going to have? Depends, right? You're going to have a ton of inspections. Good thing is that down here you don't have to worry about radon. You don't have that, right? But you got stucco, you got HVAC, you've got roof, you've got mold, pipes, septic well, all kinds of stuff, right? And have you explained all of those to your client, what all that they might want to be taking a look at? Yep, good. Fat finger Freddy up here. Jeez. Financing contingencies, we talked about that. The final walkthrough. You ever had clients that say they don't want or need to do a final walkthrough? Oh, that makes me nervous. And they say, well, you can go do it for me. Oh. Yeah. Closing, making sure that everything's ready for closing. All right, that's where we all want to be. Everybody wants to be there. They do not want any surprises. So, part of diligence, HOA transfer fees, status letter fees, all of that kind of stuff. Who's going to pay for those? Are those outlined within the purchase agreement? Do we know? Are we going to be talking about that at the closing table? Well, this was an unexpected fee. Who's going to be paying for this? Right? It's our job to try to see in advance what's going to be happening with those things, right? Possession. This is something really cool. So, how many of you were around during the mortgage meltdown? Oh, come on, some of you were around during the mortgage meltdown. So I did a lot of foreclosure work, right? And we had vacant houses everywhere. And the banks started getting wise to the fact that they were having problems after closing because there were squatters in the houses, right? Because the agents weren't checking up. And so we had to sign an affidavit saying that we checked that property the day of or the day before closing and it was vacant. And if it wasn't, then the banks would push off that eviction process and everything to us, because of parties in possession at closing. So if you have a vacant property, that's kind of still an issue, guys, having people in possession. If you've got a vacant property, you might want to have a clarity around that with your clients as to who's going to be checking on that property. Because it ain't me, unless they're out of state, right? Okay, diligence. What are your processes for finding the property they're looking for? What do you do? What do y'all do finding the property that somebody's looking for? Come on, this is interactive. What's that?
Sit down with them and go over what they're looking for first.
Uh-huh.
And then you pull up the MLS, you start putting in their criteria.
MLS, criterion.
And then they start talking about what they like.
And if you can't find it, do you ask other agents and start digging around? Off market, good. Finding buyers for their property, same thing. Regular communication. How often do you have a system in place for regular communication? Do you have a follow-up Friday or a Monday morning something or anything like that? Is it in writing? You have a nice little form that you fill out and send to them? I would suggest you do that. Nice little form that just has an outline of some key items, like how many showings this week, who have you talked to about the property, where is it posted, did you boost it, all these kinds of things. And then you can make a copy of that and then add to it the next week so that you kind of have a running order of what you've done for them. So that's on the seller side. That same thing could be happening on the buyer side. How many of you know that we have to start proving our worth on the buyer side a lot more? Yeah? Right? How many's buyer consultation has gotten a lot better since the rules changes? Yeah? Okay. Monitoring deadlines, tracking marketing effectiveness. Tracking marketing effectiveness. Leslie, I kind of get an idea that's kind of up your alley. Is that one thing that you do is track marketing effectiveness? Would you mind telling us what you do to track marketing effectiveness?
I'll give some tips on what any agent can do without being a digital marketing specialist. And two main things that we have access to are Realtor.com stats and data. There is a buyer's and a seller's report that's customized even after you do an enhanced listing profile. Zillow also has that availability, but I would send both of those pieces of data from your own custom domain so that you're not sending your clients back to another portal. You're
Correct.
still keeping them in your ecosystem. The other thing is InfoSpark and our MLS is a wealth of data when it comes to days on market, market trends that we're looking at. Days on market right now is specifically killing our agents.
Yes.
We're talking about days on markets like it's 2021, and we have a third more inventory out there. So we have all of those. We pay for that material already without having any digital specialty. or
Correct.
technology.
Yeah, she's got some really good ideas there about, Realtor.com, Zillow, other things. But I like her point about keeping them in, as she said, your ecosystem, right? If you send them out to another platform or something, they get removed from you and then they start asking you, what about this? What about this, right? And they can run you down a rabbit hole. I believe, did Jezrin just send out a notice of ListTrack being available for $100 a year or something like that? Did you bring that to my attention? Yeah. I know other MLSs use this, and I asked Jezrin why they did not have it, is ListTrack. And if that is available for you to purchase, you might want to take a look at that. ListTrack actually tracks all the activity on your listings, and it will track all kinds of different places where people are viewing yours. So for buyers, your marketing effectiveness is trying to find that property too. Who are you talking to? What are you doing with that? This is what I get for having a different setup. Okay, so we talked about the diligence and the inspection period and what all you needed to have in there. I got out of order because I can't hold the the mic and my clicker and my book at the same time. Sorry about that. Another diligence item, lease terms, an estoppel statement. Have any of you ever heard of an estoppel statement? You have? Do you understand what an estoppel statement is? Okay. An estoppel statement is actually just a third verification of lease terms. It's a form that can be given to the tenant. So if you're selling a property that is tenant occupied and that investor is going to be maintaining that lease on there, the landlord is telling you what supposedly the terms are, and you may have a written lease, right? But what if there's other unwritten agreements that they have, right? And that landlord may not be telling you about it. It is, I think, a good practice to use an estoppel statement and request that the listing agent have the tenant fill that out so that you have a third-party clue as to what the tenant and the landlord may or may not have agreed upon. You can request it, but you can't make them fill it out. They're not a party to the transaction. They have no obligation. But I've used those in several occasions just to verify that what I'm being told is accurate, right? What about allowed uses for the property? Are we experts in what properties can be used for? No. It's a house. You can live in it, right? Required permits. Were they in place when things were done? Around here, I find out that a lot of times there were no permits pulled. And back to a certain date, they just weren't even kept. My gosh, I learned a lot moving down here. What about school requirements? Crime? Are you directing these folks to look at crime? Are you directing them to look for sex offenders? This is one of my pet peeves. I believe that should be in your buyer's rep agreement or your buyer's consultation to be talking to your clients about sex offenders. One of the first times, boys, this was 2022, I think, I started teaching buyer's agency here. I said, you need to be talking to them about sex offenders, and somebody in the class said, yeah, but that's in the purchase agreement. You don't need that in the buyer's rep agreement. I said, if it's in the purchase agreement, that's too late. That's too late. They've made a decision on a house, right? And if that's important to them, you should at least let them know up front. And if they're going to make an offer on a house in a certain neighborhood, do you think they might want to look at that during the due diligence period, et cetera? If there's one living next door, right? If that's important, you might want to have that talk with them. Yes?
Is it something that you do as an agent tell them, or you advise them to contact the local sheriff's department?
You provide the source. That's a very good question. That's a very good question. She said, as an agent, should you look that up or just tell them where to go? Anything, permits, allowed uses, zoning, sex offenders, crime stats, any of that, you do not want to do that research for them. No way, shape, or form. Yeah, you just give them the sources. Because they may ask questions that you may not be thinking of asking, right? Again, what's important to them, we don't know, right? That's their requirement. So just like I said at the very beginning, go slow to go fast. If you have all of these conversations up front and they say, hey, I'm really interested in XYZ subdivision, great. Why don't you look that up on the sex offenders map and just kind of see if there's anything. They're everywhere. I mean, they vary from very minor offenses to very major offenses. But if that's important to those people, they should be able to go look for that. Same with crime, right? Update your knowledge on real estate laws, market conditions, and industry best practices. Where, besides here today, are some of you getting your market knowledge, real estate laws, market conditions, and industry best practices? Name some places that you go to find this information. Not Leslie.
Other trainings, other title attorneys.
Other trainings, title attorneys?
I actually want to hear what you have to say, because I think that's part of the issue that we have currently, especially when we have NAR standard, we have state standard that overrules NAR, and then we have our own state regulators, and then we have boards, and then we have MLSs. So where should we be looking for?
Oh, man. Yeah, she just bit off a lot, but she's right. So we have You know, we all have to take the national test, right, to get our real estate license because there's, you know, laws and rules that are uniform across the country. So yes, you have your license stuff, you've got your CE classes, you've got board functions, right? How many of you went to the UNO real estate forecast? Not enough, all right? I went both South Shore and North Shore. I was actually a sponsor of it this year, but that's one place, right? Because you need to have some kind of idea about what's happening in the community around you, right? MLS rules, you want to watch NAR for that, but MLS rules are handed down somewhat from NAR, right? But some are mandatory and some are optional. And so all the MLSs around the country have different sets of rules. That's one of the biggest issues that, you know, that they've had putting Rome together, right? Because there's different sets of rules and regs and they've had to consolidate things and it's been a train wreck for them. So you need to pay attention to which your MLS is. I want you to note the MLS is not NOMAR. It's not. The MLS is Jezrin that you subscribe to. NOMAR owns it, but NOMAR is not the MLS. NOMAR is the board association, the realtor association, and they only have charter over 7 parishes on the South Shore. Neighbor has charter over 3 parishes on the North Shore. My suggestion outside of this class is you should belong to the board where you live, work, and worship. So consider Neighbor. Because again, we're more involved in what's happening on the North Shore through Neighbor, right? Staying informed. Inman is one you can read, another publication you can read about what's going on. Now, I will say that Mr. Inman loves to stir the pot. He really does. He's not all that realtor friendly. He's very interesting in person to visit with, but they still report some good things. RIS Media, that's another good one too. RIS Media is another good publication. Real Estate News is another good one. I'm trying to think what all I read. Because again, I'm kind of a nerd. I read a lot of stuff. Yes? Keeping Current Matters. Where's that come from? Is that online? Is it? Yeah.
It's a
Data aggregator. Okay. Yeah, there's a ton. Now, you can really get sidelined by reading a lot of these things, so you need to pick 1 or 2 that you're really good with and just stay focused on those so that you don't get, just sideways and going down rabbit holes with it, right? Don't rely on your broker to know all of this stuff. That's a good first line. Your broker should know all of this stuff. They should be paying attention, but it's hard. I've been a broker for a lot of years. Brokers in the room will agree. It's hard to keep up on everything, okay? Any other additions that you would do, Leslie?
So there's one that's pretty new to the market that I find very good, and they do a hot sheet, and it's called BAM.
BAM, yeah.
Yeah, and so I feel like they're a real rising star. The Inman product is available to some LR members. I think they
Yes.
have a limited amount of subscriptions,
Yes.
but if you email them, you can get access to
Yeah.
that. Inman is a real estate antagonist,
Yeah.
if I would say, but still the
Yeah.
information is pretty targeted. One thing that I like to use for the agents that I oversee is go to Google and then set up a search criteria so that you don't have to always be searching for information. You can
Yeah.
have Google send you emails based on what Inman comes out with
Yeah.
or what LREC comes out with. So that way you can go to your email for quick information, read the data, and then delete it so that it's
Yeah.
not cluttering your space.
Agreed. Inman is somewhat of an antagonist. But if you're interested in getting that, yes, LR does have a limited number of free subscriptions. You can email them and see if they've got any left. That's one that I use. I do like reading it. The other thing that you can do is take all these emails and articles and stuff that you get, you can feed them into your Chat GPT and get summaries, right? kind of streamline your process. Regularly attend CE, not just what is required. I love to see agents that have over the required amount of CE because that means they're really invested in learning some things about the industry. Read industry publications, attend economic updates and symposiums. That's pretty vital so that you stay connected with your local legislators and things that are going on. There's a lot of stuff going on in St. Tammany that people don't talk about that needs to be known. Communicate effectively, maintain open and clear communication with clients. Keep clients informed at every stage. Extend the same communication courtesy to your fellow professional. I'm not talking just about agents either, right? Lenders need to communicate on a pretty regular basis. Even if it's the listing agent calling you, it could be that they haven't had good communication from the other agent, and so they're wanting to get clarification about where the process is, those kinds of things. So maintain good communication with your lenders. Anticipate potential challenges and address them. How many of you, and Mary's going to love me for this, how many of you have a pre-inspection done on your home before you list it? Raise your hands high. Be proud. Yes, good. Good. Pre-inspections are, I think, a very good thing because then you can address those items, have that report readily available, and explain what you've done. Okay? What about pre-title opinions? How many of you do that? That's getting a lot more common now, thank God. Because I'll tell you, when I first moved here 8 years ago, I called the title company. I said, hey, I need an O&E. And they're like, what's that? I said, well, it's called ownership and encumbrance. What do you call it here? They go, I don't know. We don't do that. So what has been termed down here is the pre-title opinion. If you have any question about the ownership or the ability to transfer that property free and clear with no clouds on title, that's important to get done, right? And the reason I asked for one is because it was my first transaction down here. I got a funny feeling about this guy that I was talking to, and it did. It turned out that he only had usufruct of the property, right? I don't care if you know how well you think you know these people. They don't tell you everything. They just don't, right? Now, you can't, direct somebody to must use a title company, but you can most certainly, if this title company is doing a pre-title opinion for you, you can certainly say in the listing agreement, we would prefer to use XYZ title company because they've done a pre-title opinion. They're already down the road, right? Okay? Confirm lending and any requirements prior to writing or accepting offers. If you get an FHA offer on a property and you're questioning whether your listing is going to go FHA, you need to call that lender and say, did the agent and the buyer talk to you about this? And sometimes they go, no, they never said that. Well, that could be a problem because the shingles are curling or whatever the issue is, right? And so you can head off a lot of problems just by being proactive on both sides, Protect your client information diligently. One thing that I hate is the texting of a picture of a deposit check. If you do that, I would highly suggest that you at least put a sticky note over the account numbers, right? For the deposit checks being held in your account files, I would say redact the account numbers on the copies of those checks. Fannie Mae has a term for that. It's called NPI, non-public information, and you have to protect non-public information. We hold a lot of non-public information in our files and through our emails, right? Don't discuss client information or transactions in public. Don't discuss client information with anyone other than your broker. Use upgraded email and computer security. This is becoming more and more of an issue. It's so funny. I still get agents wanting me to email them our wiring instructions. And I'm like, no, we're not going to do that. I will tell you them over the phone, right? I'm not going to email that. Don't text it, don't email it, don't nothing. Because if somebody swipes your wiring instructions in that transition of that email, you're going to be held responsible for that 5,000, 10,000, 100,000, whatever it is, right? I pay for HIPAA level security email. I just do because that's what I prefer. I want to say if I ever go to court, I at least had this, right? I tried. Adhere to ethical standards. Uphold the highest ethical standards, ensuring honesty and integrity in all dealings. Now, some people, one of the big selling points that people say about why you belong to the board of realtors is because of the code of ethics. I think, and I'm stepping out on a limb here, but I'm thinking in the next 1 to 3 years, in Louisiana, you're going to start seeing non-realtors. Other parts of the country already work with non-realtors. Did you know that every agent is not a realtor, but every realtor is an agent? Those are two different things. So when you put on your business card or your email, licensed realtor, that's not exactly correct, right? Because you don't have a license to be a realtor. Realtor means member. And so what the whole point behind this is most of the state laws, the state rules and regs were built from the code of ethics, right? So we're still held to that accountability, but you need to double check yourself sometimes and make sure, I mean, we all do, right? Leadership, do you know how leadership is done? Is it saying, you're not a leader, you should do this? No. This is, I'm going to be a leader, what should I change? How come I had a problem with Keisha? What could I have done different, right? So all of this leadership, integrity, ethics, everything goes inside. You have to look inside to change that. The last one on here, by adhering to these fiduciary duties, real estate agents uphold the trust placed in them by their clients and ensure ethical and effective representation throughout the transaction process. Fiduciary duties are extremely, extremely hard when you really think about it. Because you have to think about it. Because who do you protect at all costs? You. That's human nature, right? You protect you. You didn't do a very good job. What if I threw this at you?
You wouldn't do that.
I wouldn't do that. All right. Comprehensive market knowledge. A deep understanding of the local real estate market enables agents to provide valuable insights, includes knowledge of current market trends, property values, neighborhood specifics. Such expertise allows agents to set realistic prices, identify opportunities, potential risks, and advise clients. Where are you knowingly overpricing a property just to obtain the listing can create ethical issues? Have you ever considered doing that? I used to see it all the time, especially during the mortgage downturn, and everybody was competing for the foreclosure listings. They would tell the bank that the property was worth so much more just to get the listing in the hope of selling that thing. Some agents do work in that realm. They say, geez, I just really want this listing because it's a great opportunity and I'll work through price reductions later. Bad strategy, guys. What ethical issues can arise from working in a geographic area you're not familiar with? How many of you are duly licensed? Yeah, or triple licensed? Have you had some issues understanding some of the other market? Right? You need to spend some time there, right? Those are ethical issues. Just because you can obtain a license there does not mean you should be doing that. Y'all can get a Colorado license, but do you think you want to do work up there? Water law just alone will get you sued, right? We don't have any water in Colorado. We have laws about water in Colorado. People get shot over water. What can you do to alleviate some of that risk? You go take the CEs. Now, when I first came to Louisiana, I was not required to take Louisiana CE. What do you think I did? I took CE, right? I mean, the first time I saw the word usufruct, and I went, what? Oh, okay. Go spend some time in that area. What ethical issues can arise from working with a property type you're not familiar with? How many of you like doing commercial? Yeah? We like to call those resi-mercials. You've heard that, haven't you? Just the look on your face. All right, resi-mercials. Just because you have a license does not mean you are qualified to do commercial. All right? We have a CCIM designee in our office. So we do some commercial in our office. And I'm glad that she has a CCIM because there's a lot of things that I need to, learn from her and bounce off of her. There's a completely different level of stuff going on in the commercial world. Not all of it is correct. They don't do a lot of the same paperwork that you're supposed to do. They just leave it out. I don't know why. Okay? So what can you do if you want to work commercial? Somebody says, hey, I've got a warehouse that I want to sell. What do you say? What? Yeah, you say, okay, let me see if I can find somebody to help me do that, right? There's nothing that says you shouldn't do it, but you need to do it the right way. One of the best ways to do it from the very beginning is to just refer it to somebody and ask to be a part of that transaction process so that you can learn what's going on with it, right? Okay? And then you can start working your way in. Take some classes. What training have you had that helps you in understanding how to effectively provide guidance on property values? Anybody here have actual training on providing CMAs? Leslie, where'd you get that training?
Well, I was the state association director for the Louisiana Appraisal Institute.
Oh, that's right, you're an appraiser.
Well,
Work.
not, but I was in that education.
You were in the education department. Oh, okay. That's right. Where else do you go to get education about market analysis? Come on, some of you are zoning out. You got to think about this. This is your profession, guys. Yes.
Your wife complimented lots of people.
BPOs. Yes, exactly. You can go to, Jennifer, what are the two? You said there's a NAR pricing strategy class? Okay, so a certificate for a NAR pricing strategies class, so consider that. All right? And appraisers have classes, right? You can also call your appraiser and say, hey, my property has this, some of the comps don't, or this has it and mine doesn't. How do you adjust for that? How do you adjust for pools? How do you adjust for views? How do you adjust for getting golf balls in your pool because you're on, all kinds of things, right? You need to start asking questions. Like I said, I've got a very specific method that I use that I was taught by Fannie Mae, on how to achieve a property valuation. There's a process. It's scientific. It works. It has to be used, right, if you're going to provide a thorough analysis. Now, I will say that a lot of you in this room have a very good idea. Market knowledge. You have good instincts about what you think that house is going to sell for. But if you have to prove it, can you prove it? Right? Okay? Where do you obtain your market statistics, and do you know how to read those statistics and understand what they mean to your clients? I tell you, I've been in some offices where the broker is actually talking about market statistics, and I can tell 100% that they have no idea what they're talking about. They're just regurgitating what's on the screen. They have no idea what it means to the agent. They have no idea what it means to the client. And they tell you this number, you go out and repeat it because your broker said it, and then your client goes, but what does that mean to me? Then what, right? So you need to take some classes and find out what all these statistics, how many of you took statistics in college? I failed it twice. Are you only taking the required CE just to keep your license, or you take other courses that might not have CE to help you with your professional services? We do a lot of non-CE education that helps us with our professional services, right? Because we have a lot to learn from other service industries. This fine man over here that's the owner of the Covington Beer Gardens, he has a completely different viewpoint of what customer service is and what hospitality is, because those are two different things in the service industry. In our industry, we think of customer service. We don't think about hospitality. Right? Oh, I thought he was talking to me. He said, nice. All right. Proactive marketing strategies, good. I'm going to be able to get you guys out Effective marketing is essential for attracting potential buyers. High-quality photographs, compelling property descriptions, and a strong online presence are critical components. Utilizing social media and other digital platforms can enhance visibility and reach. In all cases, make sure that you're following the LREC advertising guidelines checklist. How many of you have read the LREC advertising guidelines checklist? Raise your hands. Uh-oh. All right, you need to know that. I have a deal with the agents in my office. The deal is if you provide me with your marketing piece in advance of it being sent out, displayed, whatever, and I approve it and you get a fine, I will pay both your fine and my fine. If you send something out without me approving it and it gets a fine, you're paying your fine and my fine. Fair enough, right? It's very simple to adhere by. Do you collaborate with your clients regarding the marketing of your home? How many of you actually collaborate and ask questions of your clients about what they want to see for marketing of their home, or do you tell them what you're going to do? Think about that. There's two different things. This business is not one size fits all. It's a one size fits one, right? Each client has a differing opinion of what they would like to see for photos, property description. How many of you have had a property go on the MLS, it syndicates, and then the client calls you, I don't like that description, I want you to rewrite it. Would it be more helpful just to have them help you write it in advance? You know, the other thing is, if you collaborate with them about the photographs, which specific photographs would you like me to take of your property? Which ones would you like highlighted? Do you have a specific order that you would like them displayed? Would you like to collaborate with me and tell me what's most important about your home so that I can adequately write a lifestyle narrative describing your home to emotionally move a buyer or emotionally move a buyer's agent to want to buy your home? Yes, they want to tell you everything about their home. They want to be involved. And then if the marketing doesn't work well or something is going wrong, it's staying on the market, who do they get to blame? Not you. Right? So the collaboration piece is vital. Proactive marketing strategies, communication. How do you craft the marketing description of their home? How many of you are using ChatGPT or AI to craft your marketing descriptions? Yeah? All right. ChatGPT loves the word nestled. It loves the word boasts. You can teach ChatGPT how to write in your voice. It takes a little bit of effort. I sat down once because I was doing a lot of work for my brokerage on there, and it was really, and I had uploaded my branding guidelines and all of my documents into ChatGPT, so it has a very firm understanding of who I am as a leader and what our company is about. I sat down one day and I opened ChatGPT, and it actually said, hello, we have been working on your brand voice, etc. Would you like to see what we have come up with as your leadership style in your brand voice? And I was like, yikes. I said, yes. It all came down. I read it and I was floored. It told me about myself. I sent it to my coach. My coach was like, holy crap, it just did that? I said, yeah, it just did that. I can see Candy like, that's scary. You have a love-hate relationship with AI, don't you, Candy? Yeah, me too. I get it. So if you're using AI to craft that marketing description, make it run it several times, right? You know, make it really work on what your brand voice is. Train your AI to speak in your language. Refine some things. Use some different words, right? What do we sell? Tell me, what do we sell? Dreams. Dreams? Close. What do we sell? Nobody wants to answer because you know it's not houses. Cars? Ourselves? That's one. Yeah. We sell lifestyles. We sell lifestyles, right? The house is only a part of that lifestyle. We have to be able to describe that lifestyle to people for them to understand why that house is right for them. Not just because it has granite countertops and stainless steel appliances and a pool and a sauna and a bidet and all this kind of stuff, right? People will forego features of a home to get the lifestyle that they want. But they won't forego the lifestyle that they want to get a home. So crafting your marketing descriptions are important. Do you control the process for Proper marketing or rush to market upon receipt of the photos. That's one of my biggest pet peeves too. I see that as soon as the photos come in, these properties are going on the MLS. A lot of agents will either then run a quick AI or they sit down and they type park-like setting, 4 beds, 3 baths, 2-car garage on a cul-de-sac lot. Yeah, right? You want to control that process so that you make sure you've got all of your marketing in order, right? Go slow to go fast. Because once that thing hits the market and it's populated, it's syndicated online, and then you go back and change it, it doesn't always change. Sometimes it gets re-syndicated. Are you aware of that term, re-syndication? If you're using ListHub or anything like that, there are syndication sites that will re-syndicate your stuff, and it won't update for 7 days, 14 days, and you've lost control of your stuff, right? So you've got to be on top of it. Personally, I don't allow any of the ListHub sites that re-syndicate. I take those out. Do you have high quality, professionally printed marketing materials or produce them in-house? Don't be cheap. Produce nice stuff. Personalized client service. All right, we're doing good. Understanding and addressing the unique needs and preference of a client is vital. This involves active listening, asking pertinent questions, and tailoring services to meet individual client goals. Personalized service fosters strong client relationships and leads to successful outcomes. Is your service one size fits all or one size fits one? I really want you to think about that. By adhering to the foundational principles, real estate professionals can effectively serve buyers and sellers, ensuring ethical practices and successful transactions. This is why we have very specific pre-listing interviews, listing consultations, buyer consultations, where you take a lot of notes, right? Because you want to know what's important to these clients. One of the first things you want to know, you know what, a rookie comes in, you're a rookie, right? And so they say, oh, you should do some floor duty, you should do opportunity time, answer the phones, all right? One, that's a way for your brokerage to get a free receptionist. Second one is, do they actually teach you what to say? Do they teach you how to vet? Many times not. And so some of the first things you're talking about with people is, oh, you want, yeah, okay, what neighborhood are you interested in? How many beds and baths? What price range are you in? You don't know anything about that person. You have not talked to them about, oh, well, what lifestyle needs do you have? What are your hobbies? Do you like to walk? Do you like to hike? Do you ride bikes? What do you do, right? Find out about things. You guys know the Ford formula? All right, utilize that. Because some of the people were talking about it earlier, about following up on leads and talking to them and getting to know them. That's what you need to do, right? What questions might you have about some of these practices? Yeah, you can attack your phones. You can exercise your laptop lid. We did not take a break for bathroom and stuff, so I get to stop just a little bit soon. But I do want to answer any questions that you might have. Because very often when I teach a class, I get agents looking at me like I got 3 heads because I'm speaking a little bit different language about how real estate should be done. Any questions about what I'm talking about? Yes?
How do we take more of your classes?
How do you take more of my classes? I am a CE vendor for hire. So it's very typically with lenders, title companies, et cetera, that hire me to come out and teach. So yeah, we'll just watch around. Women's Council, yeah, Women's Council. I'm doing a non-CE event June 5th with YPN. If you're not a member of YPN, Young Professionals Network with Neighbor, that's okay. And you don't have to be young. There is no, it's geared technically for 40 and under, but there is no age limit or requirement. And I'm doing one there called I Have My License, Now What? I actually have several of those little lunch and learns, like I have a listing, now what? Because a lot of times you're not told what you're supposed to do with all of this. You don't understand. How many of you, when you got your license and you got started, really knew what was about to be asked of you? Not at all. Not at all. How many of you This is your only career that you've ever had. One, my wife. She's rare that way, right? This is usually a second career, third career. Sometimes it's a part-time thing, you know. And the HGTV, is it HG? Whatever it is, the TV shows are the worst things that ever happened to this industry. The worst thing that ever happened to this industry, because everybody thinks it's just so easy, and this is far from easy. I appreciate your attention. I hope you learned some things. You need to be sure to sign out. I don't know where the sign out sheets are. Oh, I think you have to go out to the registration, sign out there, and they will have your certificate for you.
Thanks, Steve.
And I hope you learned some things.
Thank you, Steve. All right, so we finished 5 minutes late, which is better than I thought we were.